I'm Jack, the head of community at Canto. I'm the least experienced and knowledgeable on the topic of higher education, so my role is to facilitate the conversation, which is why I've brought in three incredible people to join on the panel. Just in order that you see here, we have Jesse Calderone from Studio Enterprise, which works with a few schools in the higher education space. Jesse's specialty is video and multimedia. His title is the digital media coordinator, but he's quite proficient at anything having to do with creating media specifically for schools. And he's just an incredible technologist. I don't know if that's the right word, but he's very quick with a lot of the different technologies that we're seeing emerge in the space. I'll let Jesse and all three of them add a little color after I go through the rounds here. Gina is the art director at the University of Dayton. She's bringing in the design expertise for the panel. She has background as a graphic designer. She's also the president of the UCDA, or chairman of the board. I'm messing that up right now. I'll let her elaborate, but she's very involved with the UCDA as well, so I'm sure she can elaborate on that. And then last but not least, we have Matt Lester, who is one of the most talented photographers I've ever seen. If you happen to connect with me on LinkedIn after this, he actually took the photo that I use as my profile photo. I joke that it makes me look like I'm speaking at a TED Talk, which I never in a million years will speak at a TED Talk, but Matt's the guy responsible for that. But more than that, Matt spent many years taking photos on campus for schools around the country. For a lot of the schools that are actually at our event right now, we're incredibly lucky to have Matt on the panel as well. And if you are looking for help with photographing your campus, I'm going to give a shameless plug to check out Matt Lester at his website. I think it's MatthewLesterPhotography.com, but we'll share that in the email after as well. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I could see everyone's pretty faces here. We're going to do a quick kickoff intro before jumping into our panel conversation. The icebreaker question that we determined is, what has been your happy discovery during COVID-19? I'll start with mine. I took a cross-country road trip with my fiance from San Francisco to Chicago, and I learned that Utah might be the coolest state in the country. They have so many national parks. It's incredible. But that was my happy discovery. Let's have Jesse pop in next. Jesse, you want to give a little more color on your background and then your happy discovery during the pandemic?
My most unhappy discovery is that if you don't send Jack Hubert a profile picture, he screenshots you at Canto Connect.
I asked for your profile picture. You didn't send me one.
I didn't. It's true.
I couldn't find it. Sorry.
Great intro. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. You say I'm on top of emerging technologies and things. I would say that I'm impatient. I think that technology has a lot to offer, the way we live our lives, the way we do business, and we are currently in a fiery crucible as we all learn to readapt through technology on how to run our businesses, our schools, our lives. The powers that be have forced our hands, but luckily we are ready. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about anything virtual, anything network oriented. How do we continue running not just schools, but businesses virtually? And I would say a happy discovery. Matt, are you going to do your same one as last time?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Well, then I won't. I stole Matt's like in real life, so I'm not going to say that discovery. I don't know. I got a cat. She's great.
I will add, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but Jesse is admitted that he's an introvert and he loves to work remote. So this is kind of like a dream come true, minus all of the bad stuff associated with it. Yeah, so I don't know if that's a happy discovery or not, but I just have to throw that in there.
I went remote about a year ago, and it's my ideal lifestyle. And now you're all with me. Welcome to the future. I hope if you want to go back to the past, you can. I don't know if we have that capability. We'll see.
We're not happy to be here, Jesse.
All right.
Up next, I'll let Gina jump in from University of Dayton. And also, as I said, it's president of the UCDA, right?
President of the board of directors.
I knew I was mixing things up. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So my name is Gina Gray. Like Jack said, so I am the president of the board of directors at the University and College Designers Association. but that's actually a volunteer gig. Tadson and Chris are actually the real, the wizards behind the curtain that are actually doing all the work. But my job is I am a art director at the University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio. And I have been there for about 13 years. So I initially started part-time, thinking when I had a small child at home, thinking it was just sort of a temporary thing. And now it's kind of like, oh, I think this is my career now. This is where I'm working for the rest of, my job, especially when you have children who are nearing college age. So I have a rising senior in high school. So that is a little bit about what, and before that I was doing more corporate work. So being in college and really getting my hand on the brand and stuff like that, it really has kind of brought in some of those two parts of my design career. My fun fact, well, I will one up you, Jesse. I got 2 cats, and they're twins, so whatever. But that was actually for my daughter. That was for her birthday, because things you do in COVID you wouldn't have done before. Like, now my daughter has a TV in her room. Now she has 2 kittens. Like, it's like anything to kind of keep them busy. But the other thing that I had talked about before was that my family does a family Zoom. It started out because we weren't seeing each other, and we're doing a family Zoom every Thursday night. Sometimes we don't want to do it, but we always do it. And it's like my whole extended family, my mom, my dad, my stepmom, like my brother who lives in Argentina. So I think that's been kind of fun to kind of get to know them a little bit more than, and I'm talking to them more often than I did ever before. So that's been kind of fun.
Awesome. And I think that's a Matt Lester photograph you're using as your background, right?
It's not, and normally I would, but one of our videographers he did an aerial shoot the other day. So okay. Apologies to Matt, but Matt is an amazing photographer, and almost everything else we use is his stuff. So
this is a Matt Lester photograph.
I did the interior design on that Jesse's house. Yeah.
Thank you.
Matt, you want to jump in here?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Matt Lester. I'm a photographer specializing in higher education marketing. I'm based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and work nationally, kind of focused on visual storytelling for colleges and universities, for admissions materials, student recruiting, fundraising, things like that. It's been an interesting time. We've got a high school senior who will be a freshman next year out in Chicago at DePaul in their film and TV production program. So I'm kind of seeing both sides of this right now as a parent with a student going into university, and also someone who's kind of on the marketing side of that. So it's been an interesting time, and just kind of watching that pivot in terms of how is that marketing shifting online, and even with stuff like campus tours and Zoom meetings for like orientation last week was a Zoom online Zoom meeting, and things like that. So it's been an interesting time in higher ed. But for me, I think the best discovery of sort of this stay-at-home time was my wife had this great idea back in March that we should walk every block in our city. And we live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is an older town. It like dates to the mid 1700s. So like there's some great architecture, just an interesting town. It's pretty walkable too. I think we looked it up. There's about 113 miles of streets. So we ordered a paper map online and just started walking the dogs and like crossing off every block as we covered it. And it was a really great time. We saw all sorts of different interesting stuff, took lots of photos, and really was sort of like traveling in our own town. So it really kind of fed that need to like escape our house and like find something to do that kept us busy and be socially distant from people at the same time. So that was that was our discovery of the pandemic.
and it's Lancaster, not Lancaster, which I butcher a few times. While I'm reusing jokes, it is an Amish country, but Matt is not Amish despite the beard. He didn't get offended when I made that joke the first time, so I'm hoping he doesn't get offended the second time.
Yeah, this beard sort of predates the pandemic, but I think it's probably grown another inch or two in the last few months. So, yeah.
That's impressive. And by the way, I'm actually working from an office in downtown Chicago, right across the street from DePaul's brand new Lincoln Park part of their campus.
Nice.
It's an absolutely beautiful school. So your son's going to be in a great place if and when he gets back there. And shamelessly, I'll also throw out DePaul as a happy Canto customer as well. I don't know if any of them have joined us, but their campus is stunning. So let's jump into the topics here. So obviously, we're all here for a reason. What's going on in higher education has been disruptive for a few years now, but COVID is obviously accelerating everything, and it's bringing to the forefront changes that have been in the works that are now coming to a head this next fall semester. There's a ton of uncertainty. I think there's a fair amount of paranoia and just fear over what's going to happen both to our students, our schools, possibly some jobs, budgets. It really is a trying time. So we wanted to get everyone together to just talk about it and riff on a couple ideas. The way that Matt, Jesse, Gina, and I thought this conversation could go is kind of high level to low level, where we want to start by talking about the changing higher education landscape, both pre and during COVID, but specifically during COVID, and how campuses are going to be pivoting from campus to digital to virtual, hybrid approach. How are both teams and staff and faculty kind of adjusting to that new normal? And then specifically, how are marketing and creative teams helping and preparing with that transition? So everyone in the room today, what can we specifically do to add value, get ahead of this, maybe try and make lemonade out of lemons, or at least make the best of a bad situation? And then if we have time, drill into some of the tools that teams are using to help. Canto being an obvious one, but we don't want to spend more time than we already have talking about Canto. We really would love to hear like what other tools are enabling your teams to work remote, collaborate, help your students and staff, do what they have to do from a different location. So hopefully we have some time for that. So let's jump right into kind of that high level conversation with the first question, which is, what is going on in the higher education landscape? Like, what are you seeing at your schools or at the schools that you're working at with this next fall semester and in general? Like, what are the big changes going on? And I think, Gina, you would probably be a good person to kick this conversation off. What are you seeing at the University of Dayton right now?
Well, I think don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, I think that we have to be flexible. So we are intending to start classes in person, and students are actually moving back to campus first week in August, and we're doing it in phases. So, but it's going to look a lot different. So I think that what we've been trying to do is really communicate. This is what it's going to be like. This is what the expectations are, because if they don't follow these pretty, steep expectations, then they might have to go home. And so every class had to be created in sort of a virtual, that they could be at home or in the classroom. So I think obviously it's been a big heavy lift on those educators having to figure that out. So, and then on the marketing side too, like how do we have to shift day to day, like because we might shift how we're marketing it if they're going to be at home or if they're going to be on campus. So I think the moral is just to be as flexible as you can, but I think that like all schools are different. There's a lot of schools that are completely going online. And I think I think some people maybe would prefer that, and some faculty prefer that. So it's a real weird time to be in higher ed, because we just don't, there's some people who really want to be back. There's some people who don't want it. So it's really difficult to kind of make a plan. So we're trying to just kind of be flexible and go like day by day.
And Jesse and Matt, I know, so you're in similar positions as us at Canto, where we work with a lot of schools. What have you seen specifically with the schools that you're working with?
Mad scramble. It's a lot of decisions to make all at once. There's too much catch up going on to let people think about what comes next. But I think we're finally turning the corner on it. Gina, you're moving in, you're creating everything in duplicate. You're actually one of the first schools I've heard to actually say that, make that decision and have a plan for it. What that makes me wonder is if you guys have thought about the opportunities that are within that. If you're creating every class virtually as well as in person, does that do anything to your enrollment numbers? Does that expand your outreach? Are there suddenly more people you can market to that might not have ever made it to campus, but maybe they can take these classes online? I think these are the things that we can, when we're under control and when we do have a plan, this is stuff we can start thinking about. It's something on the media side, mostly I deal with marketing, but I see that there could be opportunities on changing the way we educate, changing the way students interact with the university through media and through platforms. I mean, there's so many out there that were already built to share video and share live communication. It's interesting to see what's going to come to the surface. I mean, here we are on Zoom, which I don't think 90% of people knew about before. And now it is one of the most common household words in America. So what other things can we use to move this forward? Matt, you went away from my grid. Where are you, Matt?
Matt was having some, it seemed like he was having some internet issues before, so I'll let Alex help Matt jump back in here. But it's interesting. You brought up the idea that this actually presents some unique opportunities to expand reach. One thing that I think is interesting is that students today are more technologically savvy than obviously any other generation to come before them. How do you factor that into your strategies? Like, do you just assume that students are going to be ready to go virtually, or do you think that there's a fair amount of educating that the marketing team can do to help with that transition? Like, what do you think of that scenario?
It is a very double-edged sword from what I've seen. Students are technologically savvy. They're ready to go. They know what they're doing when they need to connect. They need to video chat. They need to log into a virtual classroom. They also have a very good understanding of how much they can slack off or how much they can ignore things or how much they can procrastinate because of the switch to online. So I've seen things on both ends. Some students thrive, others see, okay, suddenly college is a lot easier for me because I don't need to be as active as I was before. There's that. And also, as you asked about preparing for that, something I've definitely seen, and this is no offense to anyone of any age, this is across all ages, but there does seem to be some technological updating and learning that needs to happen from certain professors I've seen. I get back very difficult video to work with. People are in like a corner down here and the sound is barely audible and there's hours of this and I can't do much with this, but I have to. Everyone needs to kind of, I don't know if there's how to be comprehensible on webcam classes, but if there are, we should offer them. Glad to have you back, Matt.
Side business to start. Teaching teachers how to do proper Zoom lessons or Zoom classes. Matt, are you back? Are you having your audio and video back?
Yeah, sorry, I had a connectivity problem with my computer. It just crashed out. Sorry about that. I'm back though on my phone. But
no worries.
Yeah.
We're seeing you loud and clear. Just as we're talking about technical difficulties, you're right out here.
One thing I would say though about that, is that so March, when everybody had to go home or whatever, that was kind of like a crash course. So I think that if people are going, I think the faculty and the students sort of saw what worked and what didn't work. And so they've been able to then kind of shift and figure out how to create those lessons, and whether that's high school, college, elementary, like they've been able to have that sort of test. And so now I think that they'll have a little bit better understanding of how that works. And obviously we're much more accustomed to some of these platforms and these technologies.
Jack, I see a question from Rowena. Can I jump in on it?
Yeah, let's make this a conversation.
She's asking about photography material people are using masks. I assume you mean people wearing masks, not like a Photoshop mask. Okay. A masked or unmasked or a mix. Interestingly, I've brought it up a few times and get weird negative reactions from some of my clients. They want to see people working from home, but anytime they're in a cafe or outside, they say, not that, that looks too risky. But I think it's something that we're going to have to get used to. I don't know if there's any kind of cultural bias because we live in a nation where we don't wear masks all the time. That's someone else. Well, not anymore. I think we should get used to it. And it's, especially if you have students coming back to campus, I think it shows safety and forethought, if anything. I think people are going to be more safety conscious. And if there's staff and faculty wearing masks on campus, I think it's only a good thing. So I haven't seen it, but I think we should. Has anyone else?
Matt, as the expert photographer, what have you seen?
You're on mute, Matt.
Matt's much better at photography than he is at Zoom. So that's.
I'll say one thing while he's connecting. So we had a little, like our video people and like a staff photographer went out and did shoot sort of like mock classes of like what a physically distant classroom would look like. What does it look like on campus? I mean, it was kind of jarring to see the students in masks. It was kind of weird, but it was like, I think we have to do that. Yeah. We have to shoot some of these to promote it. Will we use them in 2 years, or will it be like, wow, that was weird? I don't know. But I think with admissions materials, like I kind of was like, I don't think that you have to be so specific that like every single person in the background of a photo, like I think if we put like maybe circa dates, like circa 2019 or something like that, so people aren't like, well, why aren't they wearing a mask in that photo? So this is a conversation we're having daily about that kind of like, how do we want to show it how we optimally like it to be, or how it is right now? And I think it's sort of a mix of both. Because I can't, like, if we're sending out just admission materials, having everybody in a mask, I don't know. It seems like, I don't know. It is just kind of one of those weird things, but I think that we have to have them just to have them.
Yeah, and just jumping in real quick there, one of the perks of being on my end as a technology provider, we get to see what literally over 100 schools are doing right now. And it's pretty incredible, the spectrum of reactions and preparations that we're seeing. And I won't name names here, but schools that have very large endowments, huge, robust marketing teams that are taking kind of the opposite approach that we would expect. They're being very conservative about how they're going to portray their campus. They're not going to be showing a lot of these, masked photographs or socially distanced classrooms. But then we work with smaller schools on the other end that have very lean, mean marketing teams, and wouldn't strike me as the type of school that would be progressive about their approach, that are getting way ahead of the curve. And they're literally taking the time right now to showcase what their school will look like so that students at least have an idea of what to expect. And we're not going to make the conversation political, but I do think it mirrors just the leadership in a situation like this. My sense is that it's better to get ahead of it and be transparent than it is to be reactive and maybe try and show things that aren't the way that they're going to be. So it's just interesting to see so many different reactions from so many different schools. You literally couldn't predict how a certain school is going to react just by how big and how much money they have. It really seems like the leadership is kind of dictating the approach, I would say.
I think too that there's really going to be a need for those kind of images just for internal communication, that show personal protection equipment, show appropriate social distancing. I mean, stuff that you can use to send to parents, to share like with emails with students, stuff like that, just so it looks relevant and timely. And I think too, a lot of parents are looking for safety and making sure that their kids are in a safe environment at school. And really, you know, this is the reality. And I think we need to show the reality of what's happening right now.
And Matt, I know it's tough to go on campus and actually do what you do normally, but what kind of requests or questions are you hearing from some of the schools you normally work with? Like, what are they thinking about for photography projects right now?
I mean, definitely a lot of those kind of images, just in terms of that show the reality of what's happening, but also I think there's an emphasis more on the shift towards campus tours, things like that. And that stuff's really important as well. With a good example is our son, like we weren't able to visit campus this spring at all. So he accepted sight unseen and like has kind of done a lot of like virtual tours of campus. There was a virtual tour of all the housing, which is really great when it came to like applying for housing, things like that. So I think things that really, I mean, hopefully within a year we'll be back to normal. And I think that we really need to show sort of what campus is like. So when stuff goes back to normal, we'll have students that have, you know, if it's partially online right now or fully online, like when they do go back to campus, at least they'll have an idea of what they're going back to. And I think that that's important. I think the second thing too, really, I think a lot of the marketing is shifting towards sort of outcome-based marketing and less sort of campus lifestyle photography, where seeing lots of schools using environmental portraiture of alumni or current students that have interesting internships,
Right.
alumni who have really cool jobs, things like that, and really kind of showing the value of an education and not really necessarily tying that to the on-campus experience. So I think that's another big shift that, is
Well,
really.
the next question is, what percentage of time are we spending really focusing on convincing people to come to campus versus getting them through the education and why that's still important? I'm sure we can all remember someone we went to school with who was way more focused on campus life than the outcome of their education. But those people
Why are you
aside,
all looking at me right now?
those people aside, Jack, the outcome of school is more important than ever, especially as the job market changes. And I also think who's going to school changes as the job market changes. I mean, we could sit here and make a list all day of the amount of people out of work right now who are probably looking for something new and are looking into higher education way past the age that we would expect them to. That's a whole other issue. I don't know if we want to pivot to that, but it's about what it does for you more than what it looks like, or at least it should be, but it's tough. I mean, it's a juggernaut. You have the buildings, you have the water flowing into the buildings, you have the Sodexo contract at your dining hall. You can't just turn these things off.
Right.
I've heard my fair share of parents wanting refunds, people wanting, to have it all back, and it's money spent. I mean, that's a tough thing for everyone to realize.
Yeah, we were a Chartwell school. I don't know if we need to get into those details, but I'd be curious to hear what Dayton's doing with this. I've actually heard of another school very recently that just enabled their incoming freshmen and sophomores to get fall internships in place of credit for the fall semester. And they're offering a one-to-one, I don't know what the term she used was, but essentially they're saying, hey, we'd rather you go get an internship than come on campus to help promote the social distancing, and we'll reward you with college credit in place of coming here on campus, but you still have to pay full college tuition. And they're actually preparing a lot of their marketing materials right now to showcase that. Gina, what's Dayton doing in relation to that kind of stuff? Kind of focusing on the end goal rather than the education itself.
Well, I mean, we are, like we said, we are going to have in-person classes, but So I think from like a body count perspective, they're asking people, that's why I'm going to be working remotely. But anybody that can be working remotely is staying at home. So then there isn't as many people on campus and there's more spaces to spread out. But we've been doing that, I think, for a while, that sort of outcomes-based marketing spin, basically, because telling those personal stories, because just having tested lots of advertising and what are people reacting to, and that usually is the thing that people are more reacting to, those personal stories that I went to school here and then I got this job and now I'm president of this company or something like that. Those are always stories that seem to get a lot of attention. So I think we've already been sort of telling those stories. So then we're kind of like, we're just having to find those stories. And I think that's one thing that's a little bit more difficult, is not having, being remote, you don't have as much like connection to everyone. But as far as the like credit for internships, that's an interesting idea. I don't know if we're doing stuff like that. If I were on the, more of the faculty administrative side, I would probably know that more of that information, but.
One question that I know we talked about when we were preparing for this conversation, it's related to this, is empowering both teachers and students to produce video and content quality that's up to par with the rest of what your marketing and design team is doing. How do you do that? Like, how do you get an alumni that's working a job in New York City? Like, how do you empower them to showcase their job in a way that you'd be comfortable sharing across all of Dayton's different marketing channels?
Well, I mean, it's like kind of what Hav said, it's with mixed results. Like we having user generated content, even with pretty specific instructions. I think that I think you just have to kind of do with it what you can with what you're given. But like, yeah, having the most specific, like take it with this light or do this kind of thing. For something, what we've also tried to do, a campaign that I'm working on right now is to focus on people that are some students that were local, so that we knew that we could shoot them. And so we could have control over that. We've done some stuff via Zoom, but the quality is not very good. But I think that Jesse said this before, like maybe having that more authentic look makes it feel a little bit more, I don't know, authentic, like a little bit more, I can't remember what you had said, but it was something to that effect.
It's an accidental push into a brand new aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like as designers, we want everything to look perfect, but that's just not how that's gonna be.
We would love every person who did a Zoom call to look like Tadson right now, but the world is, we have to shift away from long lenses, shallow depth of field, that look we all love. I know your iPhone can do it, but no one seems to work it right. And we just have to get used to people in mid shots on wide angles with the downward thing, unless you have a small laptop or a phone. I mean, but that's the thing. We have a get out of jail free card. Everyone's doing it. If every late night talk show host is doing it, we don't look that bad. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, how do we move it forward? Do we settle here, or do we and recoup our losses and say this is good enough for now, or do we try to find new ways to make our faculty enhance their experience? In a career ago, before I did what I do now, I did a lot of work on trying to get people in front of laptops to sound good, to look really good, as professional as possible. I mean, at some point, we might start mailing technology packets to people, instructing them how to use them. As a video person, we've already talked about this, sending out lavalier mics and maybe ring lights, getting better web cameras for people. It's a lot, it's an investment, but every investment has to come from something we're no longer spending money on, like trash pickup, I suppose. We'll keep picking up the trash, maybe.
I'm not doing good. Matt, are you seeing any requests to kind of help do this? So you're not going to campus, but like, are there opportunities for you to go to New York City and showcase 5 to 10 alum in New York City from a certain school? Like, is there an opportunity for you to help empower, these remote employees to take better photos of their curriculum? Like, what are you seeing there?
I think definitely there's a shift to that. It's interesting. I have a handful of projects lined up for the fall, and I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like at this point. It's pretty interesting because, last season, what ended up happening, typically spring and fall are my really busy times of year, and everything is on campus. And so spring last year, it was just a complete wash. Nothing. Yeah, we didn't shoot it all last spring. And so I'm kind of being hopeful about the fall, but it feels like with the way that the virus is trending and things like that, it's hard to know what the fall looks like. So yeah, a lot of what I'm sort of trying to focus on is more of those kind of projects that are, portraits of alumni, also, shorter shoots for campuses that show proper PPE and social distancing, things like that. And just kind of trying to shift to the current situation and figure out what that looks like from a media standpoint, and how campuses can use these sort of images. So
I wanted to say it was the least surprising thing to me, the link Javi just sent. If anyone's going to have a kit ready to go, it's B&H. Shout out to my New York family. Well, I'm not Hasidic, but they are. But don't worry about that. They have all kinds of kits, and that is the kind of thing we need right now. So I'd give that a look. As we're talking about faculty here, I've noticed right now we're knee deep in virtual graduations. Every school we work with needs one. We're trying to get these commencement things underway, and it's a real disappointing thing when the gravitas that should be your school president or dean is suddenly a person in a computer-generated hat with a diploma waving around in front of them on a cell phone. I've seen other schools put them in front of a podium and produce this and have the videographer do it. I think that consolidation of resources and being smart is a thing to do. If I had some money lying around and I was in a more populated area of schools, I would probably set up a studio and say, come one, come all, come to your speech in my studio. We'll put your colors behind you. We'll do this, that. I think these are the solutions that we're eventually going to have to get to. Safe environments where the people are limited, to get that really professional look. That can happen. And luckily, a lot of schools have space where they can do this on campus. You have videographers on staff. But if you don't, finding a central location, or like we're talking about in the chat right now, getting people proficient at home to do this stuff is big.
Yeah, and speaking of the chat, it's been awesome to see how healthy it is. It's clear there's a lot of thoughts, questions, and opinions on this topic. So I want to make sure we have enough time to open that up. Last question before we do, and this is a little bit more of a pointed question. Given the fact that there's so much changing, resources are so scarce, heads have to be combined to multitask and do different things. What is more valuable for our higher education marketing teams to help with right now? Marketing the school as a place for prospective and returning students to come back and feel safe coming back to, or empowering teachers and faculty to do what they have to do virtually at the level that they need to do it at. And I know there's going to be some gray area, but I look at those as two separate buckets that our marketing teams and photographers and videographers can help enable. Where should we be spending the bulk of our time and resources right now?
That's a really good question. I feel like there needs to be a balance sort of between the two. And I think a lot of it is just kind of building online community with, the current students, current faculty, and sort of creating that balance. And selling that community in your marketing. And that seems to be kind of the most important aspect of that, figuring out what that community looks like in your marketing.
Yeah, I'd like to say both. I would not want to, short sheet or whatever the faculty, but I also feel like our job it's so important. I mean, this is important so I think where it comes from is reallocating. If both of those things need to be happening and we're losing revenue, we're going to have to take some things from, reshift our priorities of what we're spending money on. So whether that's deciding that your marketing is going to go all virtual, and we're not going to have an office, then maybe you save money on office space or that kind of stuff. Or what we've started to do is really consolidate and make sure that what marketing is happening is all centralized from one voice. And so that there's not money being spent in this department, in this department, in this department. And so we were already sort of in the midst of that, but it's more important now, so that we have a cohesive voice, and we're making sure that the financial, like, that we're not getting, that we have the money that we need to do what we, to get the students in the class. So like I said, I would like both. So I don't think that I could say, I mean, selfishly, I want a job. So I would love to continue to have money being spent on marketing efforts, but you have to have the people there to teach. So that's a hard balance.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick one. It's the first one. Well, I see it this way. I don't want it to be controversial. The keeping students engaged, keeping students coming back to campus feeling safe is obviously important. And it's, like I said before, not something we can stop. It's not something we can turn off. But to expand the bucket metaphor, it's bailing water out of the ship. It's something we have to do to survive. But I think when we feel like the ship is floating, all right, no more buckets, but we need to start pushing in the other direction and getting, I think in a year or two, your campus is going to be more attractive, and what your campus is might be a web space. It's going to be more attractive if your professors and your community is online, working well, and very good word to use, Gina, centralized. That is one of the biggest problems with all the marketing teams I liaise with. They are trying to get stuff together, and they're saying, where's that thing from 2 years ago? Where's this? Where's that? Everything's on a hard drive on some person's desk in an office they can't get into. I mean, we're drowning here in not being centralized already. And I've already worked with 3 schools building their archive up to be cloud-based, have everything in one place. It's not so that no one can get at it. It's the opposite. Everyone should be able to get at it. It should be in one place where people can get what they need faster. Because with the technology we have now, there wasn't an excuse 3 years ago, and there's certainly not one now. This isn't a Canto plug, but it's a plug for any digital asset management. It's a plug for file sharing, anything like that. I have a lot of people complaining that, that I'm trying to work with them, and they say, well, just don't use Dropbox, because their reason is that they don't want to pay for it, and they use the free one, and the file limit always gets reached. I mean, these are tough decisions to make, but at some point you have to say, we're not paying for this, we're going to have to pay for this, and it's going to work out in the long run. So that's my complex answer, and I have no other kinds. We got to keep things going, but it's the future to be that centralized, very web savvy thing.
Matt, anything you want to add to that?
I agree. I feel like we're kind of in the middle of just a huge cultural shift. And I mean, I see college and being on campus as, sort of a really formative experience for people, and one that, I mean, kind of follows you through your whole life. And it's sort of this bridge from being an adolescent to being an adult. And it's interesting. I feel like being on campus is sort of this like sandbox for life, where you've got this space to make mistakes and recover from them and carry on, and then, slowly kind of leave the nest and become an adult. And so it's hard not having that on-campus experience, which I feel is like really, really important to that. And so I feel like there's going to be some just really big, just cultural and sociological shifts if we do move away from that, from that idea of like, you know, leaving and going to college and it not just happening online. And the other thing with that too, I feel like, and we talked about this the previous webinar, just the idea of like online is really flexible for people. And if you're working, you have a family, doing classes online in the evenings, things like that. So I feel like with schools shifting online, there's this democratization of education too, which is really great for people who don't have time to, you know, drop everything and move onto campus. So yeah, it's kind of, there's just so many changes going on right now. It's really hard to see like 2-3 years in the future and see what this is going to look like when it's all over.
Yeah.
Well, that's the wonderful benefit, right? That some of those, like, yeah, we've always wanted to do an online program. Now you figured it out.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not well, but we've started. So that is like, I think all of like, we have to remember some of those positives so we don't get too down. And I think that these students, like, we don't give them enough credit. Like, I think this is great experience for their life. They are having to learn some really important skills really fast. And I think that about my own children, that this is really difficult for them, but like what interesting adults they're going to be because they've lived through this time and have had to sort of shift and learn and do things like and adapt. And that is like there's some positives. So I just we can't forget about some of those things. And like, right, the expansion of what our educational institutions can offer.
I was thinking about Matt's note about the sandbox and leaving the nest. As parents, I'm sure many people can sympathize. You know, you were certain that those kids are going to leave for 4 years. Oh my God, they're not going to leave for 4 years. This is frightening to a lot of people. I don't know what's going to happen, but as office space dies out and cities change and markets change, we could see something in the very near future where people do move out, but they go to a place where they live, they work, they take virtual classes from professors, maybe from more than one university. I don't know if anyone wants to hear this, but the democratization of teaching, if it's down to you and a webcam doing your lessons and you're doing all the work and you're not relying on school resources anymore, what does being a faculty look like anymore? Yeah. Why are you locked into one place? Can adjuncts teach nationwide? Who knows? It's going to be interesting, which makes it all the more important to get on it now and be a part of that. Because if going to a campus is an old school thing, we all want to go to the new school, right?
Yeah.
Oh Lord, I can't answer that.
He's like full into like the dystopian future.
Utopian.
Okay, utopian.
Yeah.
You're embracing it.
Yes, absolutely. Dystopia only happens if everyone starts wearing the same outfit and oh no, oh crap, it's here.
As long as it's not Jesse's outfit, I think we'll be fine. No, I'm just kidding, Jesse. I know we kind of blew right into the Q&A portion of this, and we're coming up on time here, which is kind of crazy. I want to say I will try and find a way for us to carry this conversation online somehow. We're actually thinking about launching a Slack community or something like that where people can riff around in different channels online and connect, post in between meetings. Seeing a couple thumbs up there, so we'll try and make that happen. I guess one question to kind of end on, because I've seen it pop up a few times and I want to make sure we address it. How are we thinking about print in relation to all of this? I've seen a few times people have been asking about it, like where does that leave print in this whole equation that we're talking about? And like, how do we make sure that it still has its place, or at least how do we transition and find value from all of those rich resources that print has made up for decades in the higher education space? It's a tough.
Well, we're doing a lot less of it, obviously, but that has a lot to do with financial constraints, and so But I think it still has its place. Like, you know, so our magazine went from, we're doing one digital edition, only digital, and then 2, I think, print editions. I'm not the designer of that magazine, but so we're still, because what we've heard, and this is really interesting, our alumni were kind of pissed that their recent edition was only digital. So I think that there's something, as far as the alumni part, that really we'll still do. And, you know, our, the admissions materials, we're still going to send that stuff out. I mean, it might be limited, but I think it's still important. It still holds a place. It's another avenue when maybe the online digital web is getting a little bit, you know, busy. And so then getting that secondary print piece is going to sort of drive that message home. But I mean, we're obviously doing less of it.
Yeah. A model right now of what teaching online looks like. It's largely PowerPoints and emails and communicating via web. I wonder if any of printing infrastructure can be adapted to assist remote teaching. And does mailing of materials to students matter more now than it did before? They used to get things in class. Should we be sending them things, you know, less brochures, more classwork? I'm not sure. I can imagine more than one professor preferring that. Getting things in their hands that they can reference rather than the temporality of online. You know, the PowerPoint's there and it's gone. I hear this from students and I hear this from faculty. So
I think the one thing we've really sort of learned from this whole situation too is that there's this need to pivot very quickly from, you know, just what your message is. And so along with that, there's this need like to change it up very quickly, which you can do with digital resources and less with print. So I think that there's still this need for print with things that are, you know, less timely in terms of like the view book, other student recruiting materials. But in terms of internal communication and other resources, it seems like there's definitely this need to shift quickly, just in terms of the images you're using, the content you're using, things like that. So
I think that's probably a good place to kind of wrap things up here, just for the sake of time. I feel like we could have kept going. Again, I would like to find a way to carry this conversation online, because I feel like we're kind of just getting started here. But quick thank you, round of applause for our 3 panelists here, Gina, Jesse, and Matt. Thank you so much for joining us here. Their contact information is going to be shared after. Additionally, I just want to throw this in here. If you have any other questions, again, please email us at hello@canto.com. I don't know if this is a good final thought, but I've never read so many of those retail brochures that they send you in the mail, like Anthropology, like Gap. I've never read so many of those since I've been locked up during quarantine. So maybe this is the time for print to kind of have its resurgence. We'll see. But if you have any ideas, by the way, about how we can make these events better, please email me directly at jhuber@canto.com. We're really trying to make this as close to in-person as possible, related to everything we were just talking about too. So, you know, I'm an open line for anything that you want to talk about with this. We have one last poll that would really appreciate it if you could fill out, just to kind of give us some final thoughts on how you think this event went. Again, thanks to the 6 people that joined us: Tadson from UCDA, Javier from USC Upstate, Rowena from UMPI, Maine Presque Isle, Gina from Dayton, Jesse from Studio Enterprise, and Matt from Matt Lester Photography. All of their information will be shared via email. And if you don't know anything about digital asset management or Canto and you want to learn more, again, reach out to us, or we'll reach out after the event, and you can, of course, take a look at what Canto is all about. But as you're leaving, thank you for joining. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great rest of the summer. Good luck with everything this fall. Maybe we should have a part 3 after the fall semester, or during the fall semester, just to see where things are at. I mean, it's changing week to week. So this could be an ongoing conversation for sure.